It's Thursday, May 7th. All the crop is in the ground, and we're out taking a look at some of our baby corn. Partly scouting for weeds, because I'm maybe going to try to spray a little bit today. Debating whether to do full sprayer app or just do some spot spraying. But things are looking pretty good. The corn is a little yellow this morning. It was pretty cold overnight last night. Not a lot of sunshine yesterday either. But things look pretty good so far. Just hoping that we don't get any real low temperatures here in the next few days. I think tomorrow night is supposed to have a chance of frost now. Which, as long as it doesn't get real cold, hopefully things will come back okay. At this point, the actual growing point of the corn is below ground, so even if it gets frosted off, my understanding is it should grow back. But for corn, you really don't want it to have a bad day to achieve maximum yields. So killing off the top chunk of the plant is definitely not necessarily a positive. But I'm hoping that it won't get that cold here. If I were farther north in the Corn Belt, I would definitely be somewhat concerned if I had corn up like this. I don't know. I know a lot of northern Iowa and Minnesota planted pretty early. I don't know exactly how cold it's supposed to get there because I haven't really had time to, go into other people's forecasts. I've only been paying attention to ours. But right now, things look good. And there's not very many weeds out here. There's a few. One spot that I was sort of digging to try to determine if my planter didn't plant or if some corn was just not really wanting to come up, and I think it was just that some corn wasn't liking to come up. This is probably a planter gap. I did see a couple spots where the row shutoffs didn't quite work right, or probably more likely the planter didn't get into the ground and get the wheel that drives the drum turning fast enough. So we've got some gaps. There's probably, 6 or 7 feet here. But probably I'm not seeing anything that's worth coming back and figure a 10-foot gap, 30 feet wide, that should be 300 square feet. So compared to 43,000, that's less than 1/100th of an acre. And it would take some time to get the planter drug out here, and probably I would run over some corn in the process. So probably, unless I find big gaps, we'll just live with it. There is one section up here which haven't quite walked back to yet, but it seems like one hybrid didn't really emerge great, or is still emerging at least. Most of the stuff has been up for a week at this point, and I need to look at the maps. I'm not sure. There was 2 varieties that I planted 2 bags of on this farm, and I know that it's one of those 2, but I don't know which one at this point, so I won't speculate and risk dragging the wrong name through the mud. But most everything came up well and quickly, which is good. And we're going to be fairly cool and wet the next week or 2, it seems like here. Alright, so here's kind of the spot. So we have, this flag is where the variety changes. So the stuff here is up very nicely. As soon as we cross over, we have stuff like still just barely peeking through. But like a week later, which is maybe not perfect, or not ideal. There are a few coming up, but my suspicion is that could be that there was a few of the previous hybrids still in the drum. So those plants came up and the other ones didn't, which actually could be a bigger problem, because then if you have corn in the same row emerging at different times, I think it can become competition to each other more so than growing at the same rate. But hopefully not a big enough area to matter. Anyway, I'm going to go scout some more fields for weeds and figure out a game plan for the day. We're looking around out in the soybean field now. So this was the first field that I planted a little over a week ago. And one of the things that I was maybe going to do today was try to get some kind of high rate, like a small high rate batch of Roundup mixed up on label, but towards the end, or towards the upper end of the recommended application range. So there used to be a waterway through here, and then had terraces put in 3 or 4 years ago. But we have sort of some lingering grass. Like there's a little bit right here you can see. It's worse farther down. But it looks like the soybeans are kind of getting close to breaking through, or at least you can kind of see where the row is, like it's pushing up. You can see where it's cracking. So I'm a little concerned that if I drive across those, I'm going to be prone to breaking the root, or I think I might hold off on that and either just spot spray the grass with the four-wheeler or wait till they get a little bit out of the ground, then I can run over them and they'll pop back without totally killing the plants. So off to scout some more fields. Now we are in a soybean field that was planted less than 48 hours ago, and we're gonna do a little digging and see if the soybeans are doing anything yet. Since we should have planted into decent moisture, my expectation is that the soybeans should be kind of swelled up, but probably not have any shoots or anything. But we'll see what we find. So there's one. So that's probably twice as big as it came out of the planter. So the seeds will take in water, swell up like that, and then basically each half of the seed, which is called a cotyledon, I think, well, I'm not sure if it's called a cotyledon in the seed form, but basically each half of the soybean becomes the first leaf. Not technically a leaf because it's a cotyledon. The first thing that comes out of the ground. Might have broke one. I don't know what that is. Looks like something growing. Unless it was just like a piece of a split or something. There's one. So, about what we would expect to see. Safely in the ground where they won't be affected by frost, so that's good. So far, scouting for weeds, I haven't seen anything that scares me too much. Makes me wonder if I should waste a day this nice to be able to spray, since it's dry and relatively sunny and not much wind. However, I think I'd really rather spray in about a week, maybe 2 weeks. The corn is up, but not hardly up well enough that I think you'll be able to row it from the tractor to see where I'm going very easily. And the weeds are all still small. If it's cold for the next 6 days or 10 days or whatever, the corn probably isn't going to grow very fast, but my hope is neither will the weeds. So since I don't have as many acres of corn this year, I should be able to spray everything in a day and a half, 2 days, I would guess. So my thought at this point is to maybe just spot spray today, do some patches where I have a little bit of weed pressure on field edges, old building sites, and places where patches of weeds form, and then wait to do like the full field spraying after this next kind of cold spell passes. But I've got one more field to check, which has maybe a little higher weed pressure. So we'll see how that looks and talk to Dad and see what his advice is, which his advice probably is to spray. But occasionally he surprises me, so we'll see. So we're over at the other field now, and this one I might go ahead and try to spray. It looks like, I think all of this is water hemp. Not positive on that, but I'm pretty sure since they're purple on the bottom side. Those will grow fast and can get away from you. And like I said, this field has a little more pressure than a lot, so trying to get those killed and future generations suppressed by getting the pre-emerge washed into the soil would be beneficial. I planted this a little earlier, so I'm hoping that I can see the rows well enough to not run over too much corn, or at least if I do run over it, hopefully it's small enough that it'll pop back. But it does look like I have a little more weed population here that might be good to spray this sooner than later. So it's about 10 o'clock now. This field's 70 acres, thereabouts. So I think I might go get the sprayer ready to go and try to do something about this. We also have quite a bit of field pennycress, which a few years ago, or my first year farming in 2016, This whole hillside had so much of that stuff I had to raise the row cleaners up to keep it from wrapping to get the field planted. We've got it beat back some, but there's still a pretty good weed seed bank here, I think. So I think I'm definitely going to spray some today in this field for sure. This new waterway seems to be filling in pretty nicely. Basically, there's a couple spots that we had put some more erosion control matting where it had cut down the side of the first strip, but it's pretty much moved all the dirt, but the erosion control matting is still there, so hopefully it's helping. And my hope is that if we have that two small ditches are easier to deal with than one large ditch. So hopefully if we can kind of get the grass built up around, then we can maybe fill this in and then kind of divert the water onto the grass that's there and try to keep it smooth enough that we can drive across it, because we farmed this across where the waterway runs. But other than this last 50 feet or so, everything looks pretty decent. Definitely has silted in some in the lower portions, and I think some of the last that I drilled is still coming. So I think this would have been some of the stuff that I ran the drill through, and I ran a pass down the middle that I didn't see too much of that stuff maybe coming up yet, so there may be some yet to fill in some of those darker spots. But the stuff that was seeded last fall along the sides where it didn't get too flooded early seems to be really filling in nicely, and I'm hopeful that if we give this another couple weeks and some sunshine, hopefully it'll look even better. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't screw around too much more the day that I was over here. I may have screwed around more than I should have. I think these passes across at this end seem to be, looks like they're doing some good or will do some good. Not sure if I should have ran up the middle or not. But other than this patch right here that's fairly dark, most of the rest of it looks like there's grass there. It just needs to grow out. So we'll see how things look. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this and try to do what we can to keep the dirt where it belongs. So we may broadcast some more seed over the top at some point. But for right now, I think we're going to leave it as is and come back and check it in a week or two, maybe after I get corn sprayed or something like that. And there's kind of some going up here too. So as long as we can avoid any really huge rains in the short term, if that stuff can get established, that should help a lot to kind of catch any suspended dirt that's coming along here and kind of help seal or help fill that back in on its own a little bit too. The stuff down here, maybe a lost cause for a little bit, but it is going over top of the erosion control mat that we ran sort of across where the waterway runs off into the ditch here, and that seems to be holding very nicely. So usually the way that these cut, like usually it'll cut, it'll start eroding here, but then it'll erode back from where, the final point that it falls off or whatever. So if we can get grass established in here and get the roots down so that this doesn't erode, then fixing the stuff back here hopefully won't be too big of a deal, in theory. It's about 2:30 and I got one sprayer load sprayed off. It looks like it looked like there were showers coming, so I didn't think I was going to get 2 loads. Now it looks like it might be breaking up, and I'm debating whether I want to flush out the boom or go home and try to reload and get another one in. And I figure probably whatever I do is going to be wrong, but I think I'm going to flush out the boom and then at least wait and see what the weather does a little bit. I might still try to do one more load, but I might quit while I'm ahead also. We'll see. But we're going to switch over to the flush tank. Now we should be able to push straight water out the booms on the way out of the field. It's a little after 5 o'clock now. Pretty glad I didn't try to do another load because it's been raining probably for 2 hours maybe now. Not anything real heavy, but definitely wet. So I think we're probably done for a couple days because there's supposed to be some more coming tonight. I've been cleaning up some stuff from when I worked on the planter earlier, and briefly tried my hand at some riveting. These blades are not worn very bad, but a lot of the bearings were out. And the blades aren't terribly expensive as an assembly, but the bearings are definitely cheaper. So was going to sort of maybe try and see if it was worth grinding off rivets and putting new bearings in. But I need to work on my riveting skills a little bit, I think. So I'm going to do a little more studying up on proper riveting technique and maybe give that another try next week sometime.